happy to be here. I've never come to Ginger Garden before, so it's really a pleasure. I'm a writer. I'm a novelist. My name's Madeleine Thien. I'm born in Vancouver. I've published 4 books. First book is called Simple Recipes. It's about immigrant families in Vancouver. And 3 novels. And it was quite moving to listen to all the different stories, because my novels touch in different ways on various things that people have been talking about. My 3rd book is called Dogs at the Perimeter. It's about the Cambodian genocide and the Cambodian Civil War. And the newest book, which just came out, is called Do Not Say We Have Nothing. It's about Chinese musicians at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music studying Western classical music under Mao at that time, and what happens to them during the Cultural Revolution. I'm kind of like Hubak. I'm an artist, so I kind of prefer just to let the work speak for itself. So I thought I'd just read very briefly, 3 minutes, and then something will happen.
That's good.
Am I too soft? Should I be louder?
You can be
A bit louder, yeah. Okay.
Just take the mic closer and put it over here.
So Do Not Say We Have Nothing is very unusually for me. It's a 480-page book. It's an epic of modern China. It goes through 20th century history from 1949 mostly up to Tiananmen Square. And the center of gravity is Cultural Revolution. I'm going to read a very small part. Part of the book is about the power of revolution and the persuasive power of revolution, and how different generations are drawn to remaking and recreating the world. So this is about, a poem. The grandfather in this family was sent to America in the 1860s, studied at Yale and Harvard, came back with lots of books. This is true, actually. And then died suddenly, leaving a daughter who eventually has a son. The older man is called Old West, and he has a daughter called Little West. Little West grew up terrified of her father's books, as if they held a disease that could destroy a village. Little West packed the books into a container and buried the lot of them. Her only son, born long after she had given up hope of a child, was the apple of her eye, and she hoped he would grow up to be a proper landlord like his great uncles. Instead, the boy lost his head to poetry. The boy was a walking cartload of books. He sat at his desk, calligraphy brush in hand, gazing up at the ceiling as if waiting for the words to swallow him. His bedroom appeared to float disconnected above the solid world of transactions, commerce, and land. She called him sometimes gently, sometimes roughly, Wen the Dreamer. He was an observant and sensitive teenager, and when the war came, it broke him. In 1949, when the fighting ended, Little West sent him to Shanghai, hoping it would restore his vigor. Books made all his pockets heavy. When acquaintances met him on the road, Wen said he couldn't stop to discuss the communists or the nationalists, Stalin, Truman, or the weather, because he was composing a 6-character, 8-line regulated verse in his head, and any variation in his path would push the words out of order. During the war, his village, Bingpai, had been ravaged by the worst famine in a century, but he himself had never known hunger. He had sat in his study, memorizing ancient and modern verses, while outside laborers ate nothing but tree bark, mothers sold their children, and young boys died horrifying deaths on the front lines. Half the village of Bingpai starved to death, but the gentry, inheritors of seemingly limitless resources, survived. Now the Shanghai literati were talking about a new kind of poetry, a revolutionary literature worthy of a reborn nation, and the idea of it both moved and troubled him. Could the avant-garde express the ideas that went unspoken? Could it confront the hypocrisy of lives like theirs? He did not know. When his poems came back from one of the revolutionary journals, a thick brush had scrawled across the page, "Excellent calligraphy, but your poems still sleep in their pastoral prison. Moon this, wind that, and who cares about your bloody grandfather? Wake up." He knew they were right. Wen kept the rejection letter and threw the poems away. He remembered Bertolt Brecht. "I would also like to be wise. In the old books it says what wisdom is. to shun the strife of the world, and to live out your brief time without fear. All this I cannot do. By chance he wandered into the New World tea house. A young woman was singing, and when the dreamer, perplexed and enchanted, listened to her for 5 straight hours. Afterwards he wanted to speak to her, to commend the harsh beauty of her music, but with what words? The young woman's music contained poetry and the written word, and yet it traveled far beyond them to a realm, a silence he had believed inexpressible. Wen wanted to call out to her, but instead he watched her disappear alone up a flight of stairs. Nothing had shifted. The world was still the same, and yet, walking home, Wen felt as if his life had snapped in two. He stood for a long time looking at the muddy, sleepless river, which in the darkness was only a sound, trying to understand what had changed.
Mm.